Hello everybody and welcome to Wine Library TV. I am your host, Gary Vaynerchuk, and this, my friends, is The Thunder Show, aka the internet's most passionate wine program. And today we focus on Puligny Montrachet, which is 100% Chardonnay from White Burgundy in France. A lot of times when people talk about Chardonnays from California, they say things like it's pretty Burgundian, or the real great Chards of the world are made in Burgundy, and that's what these are. And Puligny Montrachet is one of the great areas within Burgundy to produce white wine. They did a really interesting marketing move in the town of Puligny, in the village of Puligny in 1879. Marketing back then, their wines were known as Puligny, but they had a grand cru named Montrachet, which was ridiculously popular and extremely famous. And he decided to name all their wines Puligny Montrachet, since Montrachet was from Puligny. And that was a huge explosion for them. They really took off after that and became some of the most premier wines in all of France. Puligny Montrachet is commonly found on every restaurant list you go to. So if you go to a fine dining establishment, you'll often find Puligny Montrachet on the list. Great alternative for people that tend to think that the Chardonnays from California are too oaky. Puligny Montrachet style tends to be a little bit more minerality driven, definitely lighter on the new oak, and very classic in style, but they can get pricey. I mean, the last one here is 90 American dollars. So, their neighbor is Chassagne Montrachet. They were back then also. They were known as Chassagne, and they added the Montrachet name as well. So it was a pretty clever move in the late 1800s that propelled these wines of this part of the world to world renownedness, and they've gone on and continued to produce some of the great wines in the world. And I'm very excited. We're focusing on a 2008 vintage here. We've got 3 2008 Puligny Montrachets in the house. One is a Negociant, and 2 are kind of like single plays, single vineyard. One, which is the final wine, comes from Les Pucelles, which you can zoom in there, Mott, which is right next door to Batard Montrachet and Les Montrachet, which are the 2 Grand Crus. And some people feel like this is almost Grand Cru quality. That's why you see such big price points on them. But I'm excited about getting into them. And the first one is a whole lot of fun, because Dujac is an amazing Negociant. This is their 2008 Puligny Montrachet. Negociants go out and buy. They don't necessarily own the land. Dujac is a collaboration and a great Negociant family. $50 US. And let's see what's going on here. So 50 bones, 100% Chardonnay. Let's see what's going on this wine. So you get really great coloring. Let's zoom in here. All right. Getting real serious about these because this is serious wine. You can see the energy is a little more muted today on the Thunder Show because I'm really focused. These are big time wines. There's a gorgeous kind of like pear guava puree. So like, when you think of applesauce compared to apples, the way they smell, this smells to me as you took some guava and some pears. 84% pear, 16% guava, mashed it up. It's something you would put over, like, if you were fine dining, over like on a side as like a little sauce for like, a piece of chicken, nice piece of chicken. But if you're just going gangster on it and eating it like a fruit scoop of like applesauce, this is a very delicious nose. I get a little coconut thing going on here, and I wonder if the guava thoughts lead into that. It's got some tropicalness that's undeniable. Very pretty nose, very focused. Not too much oak, nothing's going too crazy. It's all kind of tight. Let's give it a whirl. Great minerality. 2008. Very much like 07, 06, 05. Very consistent vintages in Burgundy. As a matter of fact, if you look at the E. Robert Parker vintage chart, I think the last 5 or 6 vintages have all been scored like 91-point vintages. So really solid run here last 5 years in Burgundy. They're all different. 06s are very different than the 05s. 07's a little leaner. 08, very fat, interesting wines to me. Smells great. I mean, the nose here is spectacular. Nose is better than the wine itself because the nose, literally the nose, the bouquet on this wine is like a 95-point wine. It's incredible. I can literally sit here and sniff this wine all night long. One of the Grand Crus of Puligny Montrachet, Chevalier Montrachet, has a very distinct flavor profile. It's very focused, and it always gives me this kind of savory minerality. Crushed rock meets a little lemon from the top of a cappuccino, meets this like creamy like pear peach puree thing, different than the guava I just talked about. And this wine reminds me of it. And those wines tend to be like $1.70, $1.80. It's a very nice solid wine, very crisp, good nice minerality, not as flush and as explosive as Puligny can get. But to me, somebody who likes big Chardonnays, kind of like if you took a Talbot and you ripped out 80% of the oak that it brings to the table. You know how it's like a big Chardonnay if you've ever had it? Farniente comes to mind, Chalk Hill, big Chardonnays, but they're too oaky, or not for my palate, they tend to ride a little too oaky. Kind of like what Kistler's doing now. Kistler's on a new wave of toning down that explosiveness, and it reminds me here of that style. I do get that minerality, crushed rock, that lemon peel thing that's going on. This is a nice Puligny Montrachet to start. I'm going to score it 90 points. I don't necessarily believe it's worth $50. And so I'm not going to scream and yell and tell you to go and try it, but it is a classic example of what Puligny can bring to the table, and it's not the worst white wine I've ever had, so a lot of fun. Let's move on. Domaine Larue, 2008, Puligny Montrachet, Les Trezines, which is a small vineyard. This wine's $50 US. Les Trezines is located just above the Premier Crus vineyards in Puligny Montrachet, and it's heading a little bit towards Saint-Aubin, which we've done some really interesting shows on. Les Trezines is a vineyard I'm not as familiar with, have not had as many wines from this area. Let's give it a sniffy sniff. And right off the bat, it is definitely, clearly, obviously, just substantially less interesting on the nose than the Dujac. There's a little bit like a rubber kickball kind of nose going on the nose here, so I get a rubber kickball kind of thing going on. There's a little smokiness. I do get a little burnt wood smokiness coming through on the nose. It opens up a hair, a little lemon, a little apple, but not too much. It is, as I'm breaking it down here, opening up a little for me. And again, these white wines can age. All three wines on the table here are wines that can be put away for 5 to 7 to maybe even 10 years. So please, let's start killing that notion that white wine doesn't age. Let's give it a whirl. Interesting flavor profile, almost like a mintiness on the finish. A little toasty. Not feeling this wine, actually. It's okay. I find it medium to full-bodied. It's got some nice kind of like Asian pear flavors, really, more so than the common U.S. pear. I don't know. It's a little metallic for me. There is some minerality, a little saltiness, a little thin, and not inspiring. Speaking of inspiring, today is February 15th, and I want to wish my wonderful parents, Sasha and Tamara, a happy 36th anniversary. So that's exciting stuff. That is inspiring. I'm going to give this one a pass. This is where Puligny can go wrong. You're paying for Puligny, but it doesn't deliver Puligny quality. And that's what scares me about buying big-name wines. When they don't hit, you're overpaying. This, to me, really rivals a lot of $25, $18 to $25 Pouilly-Fuissé, Macon-style Chardonnay based in France. Just not feeling it for the $50 price point. It's a real pass, and I'm going to score this wine 84 points and give it a major pass. Uninspiring, not interesting, and kind of just took a lot of the excitement of this show out of my sails. I don't know, I'm just not feeling that wine whatsoever. Let's move on. Disappointing one. This is the big boy here. This is an exciting wine. This is the Paul Pernot 2008 Puligny Montrachet, 93 points. Alan Meadows, which is ginormous for Alan. 90 US dollars. Come on, give me 2 other glasses just to show everybody here. I'm going to get the white piece of paper. We're going to show something here.
we're going to do color comparison.
Yeah, I'm just going to show you a little color because I think it's interesting. Not the color tells the whole story, because it sure doesn't. But I do think it's interesting to learn, and you guys do watch this show to learn a little bit, not only to be entertained, and sometimes to hate it, like you did with episode 984. And so, Mott, take a look at this.
You're getting it.
Getting in a big way, right? I mean, this is dramatically darker in color. So, really interesting. That's the first thing I kind of take note of. And, a lot of times, it feels kind of, well, this middle one. It's a take note thing. You start thinking bigger and bolder and richer and more explosive. Classic old school Burgundian label, isn't it? It's like kind of how you think of the French labels. Definitely the ones I grew up with before labels started getting more modernized. Little snippy sniff. Big smokiness coming through here. Wow. Little banana peel as well. Big nose. Definitely the smokiness, but much more intense than the last wine. The burnt wood kind of thing going on. Kind of makes me think of France. Every time I go to vineyards, you see, especially in other parts of the world, you see them burning some of the vines in the vineyards. So you're just traveling in wine country, and in the far distance you can see the big smoke signals. Kind of smoke, rising, not smoke signals. Nobody's doing this, but I get a little bit of smokiness here. There's almost kind of an analogy I'd like to give it, like if you were to, wow, it smells great. The banana. There's kind of a banana and tropical thing going on, also with peaches. So I almost imagine getting a big, like, Weber, grill. I should really get Weber to sponsor me when I say something like that. Weber grill, getting, like, bananas and peaches and putting them on and, like, barbecuing fruit is kind of the way I see this. It smells great. Very focused, nice, beautiful nose. Let's give it a whirl. Still, the Dujac won me over even more. But this is fantastic. Let's give it a shot. You know what? I'm going to try this. In the middle there was almost like the fruit was so intense. There was almost like a dessert wine quality. Giving Mott a little shot of this. This is spectacular white wine for my palate. Be interesting to see what your palate. I don't give you a lot of white wines. I always try to push you into red. I always talk to you about dessert. There was a part in there that I tasted like burnt apricots, which reminds me of Tokai, and I know you love that so much. So I was wondering what you thought of this. It's dry. There's no sweetness to this wine. It's bone dry Chardonnay-based Burgundian wine. What do you think? It's an acquired taste, so don't love it if you don't. Very curious. What do you think?
It just seems very light. Getting the smoke on the end, on the finish.
So you think that's light? Taste this. So for you, since I mainly give you dessert wines, we're very viscous and heavy, and then red wines because I'm always trying to expand it. I understand where you may be coming from, but in the context of white wine, for you white wine drinkers,
Drink of water, okay.
Do you see? Did you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is heavy for what Chardonnay. I mean, how many Chardonnays have you had?
Not many.
Right, exactly. So I'm trying to give you the pretty interesting, right? Yeah. You can see how light that is, and I like that wine. That was the first one I gave a 90 to. Think about what's going on with this. So you see the viscosity.
Yeah,
no, by the way, you still don't have to like it. It's like,
it tastes it more serious.
Yeah, so it's like bullies, right? Mm-hmm. You think that guy's a bully? You don't have to like either one of them. They're both bad. They're both bullies. But this guy really beats ass. But this is a very intense, very structured. If you're a Burgundy drinker, you're going to know exactly what's going on here. Great length. This really feels like, I made a statement earlier, this wine could last for 20 years. I would not be shocked to open this in 20 years. And it's still showing, well, there's a great acidic backbone to this wine, but you don't taste it as you taste in acidic wines like yesterday's Greco de Tufo or, other, Rieslings or things of that nature, because it's so covered, so masked, M-A-S-K-E-D, by its overall structure and flavor. There's this great golden apple thing going on. There is definitely a buttery, oaky component. This will appeal to some of the people that are obsessed with the Peter Michael and the Kisslers and the Ramies of the world. And I'm a huge... I believe in California Chardonnay in a big way, but there is no question that there's a minerality difference here that you see from California, and the terroir is really speaking in this story. I mean, this is a tremendously structured wine with enormous length. I get a vanilla butterscotch kind of thing on the tail end. It tastes like a dessert, but like a classic dessert. It's almost like I feel like I'm eating creme brulee. Yeah?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like creme brulee, because it's like...
Yeah, it's like a creme brulee kind of thing. I almost feel like I'm eating it. I'm thinking about cheeses, like melted stinky cheeses and creme brulee dessert in comparison to having like a fruit tart or something, you know? It's got that classic creme, you know, like half and half. It's got that beautiful decadence that you look for in very structured big Chardonnay. I'm completely blown away by this wine. Alan Meadows is an extremely conservative critic. For him to give a straight 93 to this, I believe it. And he had it early, and I think this wine has probably developed some secondary intriguing flavors, like this vanilla flavor I think is just starting to pop, that I think will move on soon, which is why I probably brought up the half and half and the creme brulee. I'm going to score this wine 95 plus points. This wine has powered over my palate and impressed me, and has at some level single-handedly reminded me why white Burgundy and Chardonnay should be taken care of. Let me phrase that. Should be considered much more serious. Should be taken more seriously, and I'm enjoying this wine so much. Ripping stuff. Perfect balance of weight, acidity, and flavor. I love it. All right. Question of the day. Wow, that was good. Almost kind of like thrown off guard on it. Question of the day. This remind my parents' anniversary. What is your parents' anniversary? Some people. Right at this moment, literally right here, I was reminded that I did not drink enough white Burgundy in 2010, and I will be fixing that. And this wine inspired me to this is what happens to me. This single wine, I will drink more white Burgundy over the next 6 months than I have in a long time. And we'll explore it because it just overpowered me with excitement, and I appreciated it. What wine or food or experience, maybe going to the movies, what experience, preferably wine, I'll also take food, and then I'll go third in just life. But don't answer all three. Just give me one. What thing, specifically first wine, then food, then life, re-inspired you to examine if you're doing enough of it? Maybe you went, for example, I hurt my neck very much so. Very bad last week, Mott. I couldn't even move it. Like, I've always had good range here. I don't have good range here. If you actually watch Wine Library, if you watch Wine Library TV, I usually move my body when I go to the chalkboard, whereas I'll just turn on the wrestling thing, on 85-point score. So I don't have great range here. I really hurt it, tightened up, and I was in the Four Seasons in Toronto, and I had an hour before my flight, and I went down and got a massage because I was just done, right? And it hurt like heck, but it gave me more range. And then this last Sunday, I was still hurting, and I went to Equinox near my apartment and got another massage, and it blows me away on how much range I have with, and I booked 6 more massages, and I've realized you need to take care of your body, and me getting a stiff neck, and then having a massage made me re-examine massages. Massages in my mind have changed. I'm now going to have them more often, and I like them. Same with white Burgundy. They've changed in my mind because of this moment. What wine and or food, and then finally, if none of those two, experience in the last couple months has made you re-examine something? You, with a little bit of me, we're changing the wine world, whether they like it or not.